Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Basketball Conference, the ACC Football Podcast. My name is Joey Weaver. Mike McDaniel is not here. It turns out Mike is stuck in a drive-through line at a Bojangles, which, these things happen. Like, they're popular places. And so in his place, we had to go to the best person that we knew to cover the entire ACC. We had to get a proper replacement here. We bring in none other than, you love him, you missed him on this podcast, Justin Cates from InsideTheACC.com joins us. Justin, welcome back. Thank you so much for coming in and tagging in for Mike while he waits on his chicken and biscuits.
Well, I'm glad to be here. I don't know if we should consider him stuck. That seems like a good place to be in the Bojangles drive-thru. But you know what? Hopefully he does get his food at a reasonable time. Waiting in anticipation,
we'll say. And yeah. Justin, good to have you on. Appreciate you hopping in here. It was kind of a last-minute thing. We thought that drive-through line was going to speed up, and unfortunately it did not. But we have an illustrious slate of games here in the ACC this week, in Week 8. As we've been talking about, we have almost 5 games to talk about this week. It actually turns out to be 4, but Justin, here's the thing that I think is interesting is that we are talking this week about 2 division championship games. It's a little bit early for that. It's, kind of getting into the later part of October, but I think this is the week where we find out who's playing in Charlotte. And Justin, I think the place that we have to start is the place where everyone's eyes will be. The whole country is watching. This game might have a playoff implication. You never know. At 12:30 p.m. on whatever regional network your ACC Network Extra feed is coming in on, the Virginia Cavaliers on the road in Durham taking on the Duke Blue Devils. The Blue Devils, a 7-point home favorite. This is the de facto Coastal Championship game at this point, Justin. I'm sure that you are fully in agreement with that at this point. How are we feeling about the fighting Bronco Mendenhalls going on the road as a touchdown underdog? Can they get this job done and really assume the driver's seat in the Coastal Division?
This is a high GPA game. A lot of smart kids on the field bashing their heads together. Virginia, I don't know if you remember this. During one of the preseason podcasts, I kind of joked half kiddingly that UVA could win the Coastal Division. And I think you stopped me and were like, let's not get carried away. And I was like, yeah, you're right. But I don't know. The craziest things happen in this.
Oh, so you did this.
I don't know if it's really my fault. I blame Bronco. I think that's the way to go. But,
now I blame you.
Well, that seems fair. I think everyone can blame me. It's just a fascinating story watching them kind of come together. I think a lot sooner than anybody expected. That was an extraordinary from the ground up rebuild, just straight up build, frankly, at this point in the program. And his guys seem to have bought in really quickly. And, they definitely have shown some growing pains, but at the same time, they're 4-2 and looking real good.
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch. I am still a little bit in the camp of Bronco Mendenhall's kind of a weird fit at Virginia. But in a lot of ways, you really kind of can see him building what he built at BYU. The defense has really turned a corner this year in a lot of ways, honestly, which is crazy given that they lost Clint Blanding, Micah Kaiser, Andrew Brown, all those guys from last year. And the thing that has struck me about Virginia's offense, and I've talked about this with Mike a few weeks ago, was that they let 4 players touch the ball on offense. 90+% of their rushes, receptions, all that have involved a running back, Jordan Ellis, 2 receivers, and Bryce Perkins, right? There's 4 guys that get 90+% of the touches, which it's one thing to say, give your best players the ball, and that's a perfectly fine strategy, and I think that everybody should aspire to do that. But on another level, it's the fact that there's only a couple of guys that you have to kind of key in on as a defense is another kind of interesting element to that in my mind. So I'm a little curious to see if they can keep up what they've been doing. On the other side of this, Duke, their defense in particular, the front 7 has looked really good this year. I just got to watch them up close and personal, making a mess of Georgia Tech's offense last week. They've had a couple injuries in the secondary. They're a little less sturdy out there, but certainly in the front seven, very, very good. And so I think that the thing is for Virginia in this game, for them to win this game, I think that they're going to have to throw the ball. They're going to have to effectively pass with Bryce Perkins, not turn the ball over. And that's to me, therein lies the question of, can they do that?
Yeah.
I kind of lean towards no, they can't. And yet I'm tempted to just take the 7 points with Virginia and say this is going to be kind of a close game. Justin, I think I'm going to go Duke winning this game outright, but not covering. I'm going to go Duke 28-24.
Well, I think you really hit on that with Bryce Perkins in particular. He's thrown 5 interceptions the last 2 weeks against pretty good defenses. As the competition has gotten stiffer, he's started to make more mistakes. Against Miami in particular, he made some just terribly ill-advised throws. The first one in particular was across his body into potentially triple, even borderline quadruple coverage. Just, you can't force things like that. And but across the way, Daniel Jones once in a while will make throws that I still kind of scratch my head at, which I'm wondering why he does. Maybe it's just a confidence thing and he feels like he can get away with things. But, he also had a fumble that he lost last week. The ball was on the ground a lot in that game from both sides, which was fun to watch. But, I think I agree with you. I think Duke will probably win this one. I think they're the better overall team. And again, it does rest a lot with that defense, which has been very impressive pretty much throughout the season. And I think that, I've said this already this year, that this is the best Duke team that David Cutcliffe has had, I think by a fair margin, because of the combination, the balance of both sides. They've got good skill players on both sides of the football, really, for the first time that he's been there. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think UVA does have some really nice pieces, but they're going to be taxed as much as they have been. I think they're finally probably going to not necessarily take a step back, but they're going to get, you can only make so many mistakes for so long. And they've been kind of doing it with smoke and mirrors, but I don't know. Like you said, Bronco's a weird fit, but it works somehow. He's making it happen. But yeah, ultimately, I think Duke will pull this one out. I don't know about scores. This is not my realm. I'll go with a little more scoring, I guess. I'll say that Duke maybe puts up 31 and UVA gets to like 24. So it'll be right at the line there.
Oh, damn it. That's a cop-out. I don't. I need Duke -7 or Virginia +7 for scorekeeping. If we're going for a push, that's
all right. We'll say that somehow,
shot if we're saying it's going to push.
We'll say somehow that Virginia gets 23 points then. I'll say that Duke covers.
All right, so Duke covers, but barely.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'm intrigued by, and I talked about this a little bit last week as well, is that watching Daniel Jones for a full game and having seen him a couple weeks ago against Virginia Tech, something doesn't quite look right with him as far as his arm strength, and I compared it to like the Andrew Luck situation in the NFL right now, where not quite what you're used to seeing from him in terms of being able to throw a deep ball and that kind of thing. There's a lot of underneath stuff getting thrown, passes of 10 to 15 yards at most. I'm a little curious to see how Virginia's defense reacts to that. That's a thing that I could see either. It's like a feast or famine thing, right? Either Duke's going to totally just eat them up all day long with some underneath passes, or Virginia's going to give them a hell of a time forcing them to go over the top. So I'm really curious to see kind of how this whole game shakes out. It's some interesting styles make fights kind of situation here with Virginia and Duke, I think. So I got Virginia in the points. Justin's laying 7 with Duke. He is, by the way, taking credit, or Mike is taking credit for all of Justin's picks this week. So at your own risk, Justin and Mike.
Well,
anyway,
you shouldn't have gone out for food, huh?
That was the mistake. Let's move on. 3:30 p.m. on ESPN, Justin. The other game that people will, perhaps tune into after the main event is over. Number 16 NC State on the road in Death Valley against number 3 Clemson. Justin, the Tigers are a 17.5-point favorite in this game. I went back and looked, and since Dabo Swinney has taken over this Clemson team, Clemson has played NC State 9 times. Only twice have they won by 17 or more. All like the other 7 games, NC State's only won 1 of them, but almost all of them have been close. The last 2 games they've played since 2016 and 2017 have been 1-score games. NC State damn near beat Deshaun Watson's national championship Clemson team. 17.5 sounds like a hell of a lot of points in this game. Am I missing something?
That was my first thought too. I mean, Clemson is very good, but I think that's just way too many points. I absolutely think that NC State will. I don't think that they'll win, although I wouldn't be shocked if they did. Their defense is outstanding. Ryan Finley's been playing well. They've got a lot of things going for them. And I think Dave Doran is it's like the sneakiest coach in America potentially. Like he just kind of bores you to death when you hear him talk, but he really knows his stuff and he's got that program firing on all cylinders. I really fully, like I said, expect NC State to cover that 17.5. That just seems like way too many points to me. I don't get it. I don't know. Maybe those guys always seem to know what they're doing. So when I see a line like that, I'm like, what's happening here?
Yeah, when you expect that to be like a touchdown different, like I would say, give me, like Clemson minus 11 if I was just setting this line or something like that. Like,
yeah,
6-7 points different. That's where it starts to like something really seems off here. Here are the two things that I'm trying to kind of come to terms with in this game is number one, Clemson's coming off of an absolute drubbing of Wake Forest 2 weeks ago, 63-3. And then they go on a bye week. So they're rested. They've got an extra week to prepare for NC State, this whole thing, right? So that works in the favor of Clemson. At the same time, NC State, this is by far going to be the toughest game that they've played. You look at the S&P Plus ratings, and it remains an absolute shame that they lost the West Virginia game in Week 3 to the Hurricane, because that would have been such a magnificent measuring stick for NC State to have a chance to play that game. They haven't. You look at S&P Plus ratings, and the best team that they've played was Boston College at 47th overall, and they won that game by 5 points. Now they play the number 2 overall team on the road. They're projected to lose by 14.5 points by S&P Plus, right? So that's like a pretty major swing, huge uptick in competition. You wonder how that affects NC State to some degree. I'm with you, Justin. I'm going to take NC State in the 17.5. I'm a little bit nervous about betting it because something does seem off about it, and I feel like somebody knows something that I don't. I don't know if we're reading too much into Clemson just absolutely just drubbing Wake Forest a couple weeks ago. I don't know if we're reading too much into what NC State has done to get to 5-0 against teams that don't measure up at all to Clemson. But maybe I'm just going to do the naive thing here. Give me NC State in the 17.5, and I think my final score projection here is like 34-27. I'm going to say it's another 7-point game for NC State. I don't think they quite get it done. Like you, would not be shocked if they did. And frankly, NC State right now, we record here Thursday night, roughly 6-1 money line. If you think NC State can cover this game, you might want to consider throwing a little bit on the outright win, because this is about the best chance that Clemson has to lose the rest of the year. So something to consider. And again, 2 years ago, NC State had the national champion Clemson team beaten in Death Valley, and then they missed a field goal, and it was all history from there. Yeah. So it could happen. There's history there.
Yeah, and if Clemson wins this, it would be 7 straight wins in the series, and that's their longest streak. So that's kind of unprecedented to a degree. It's been a long time since that's been a thing. We'll get to this a little more in a minute, but Wake Forest's defense seems really bad. So I think that maybe the 63 points isn't that big of a thing. It's something that kind of everyone is doing to Wake Forest right now. You look through their schedule; they've just been run roughshod over a great deal this year. Even in their wins, they've given up a lot of points. So I think you're right. I think this will be a lot tighter than it's sort of a Lee Corso move, closer than the experts think. But I think I will take Clemson to win at home. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that they'll. Like you said, they have the bye week. They've got confidence. They're a little more comfortable with their quarterback situation, I suppose, as much as one can be at this point in the season with how they've dealt with things. And I think NC State will give them a good game. I think it'll be a great game to watch, and early in the day, so everyone will get a chance to look at them in the afternoon. I think if I had to pick, which I do, I'll go Clemson 35. Say NC State. I'm trying to do math now. 24. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
That's still covered.
24. Yep.
One other thing I'll bring up, I was talking about S&P Plus rankings. So these teams are combined 11-0. And I mentioned that the best team that NC State has played, we said was Boston College, right? A couple weeks ago. There's only one team that Clemson's played that was better than Boston College, and that was a 2-point win on the road at Texas A&M. Now, that's a really hard place to play. That was still, there was some back and forth with Kelly Bryant, Trevor Lawrence, all this stuff week 2. But, like, there's the only teams that Clemson has really blown out this year are teams worse than the worst team that NC State's played, right? I mean, it's really hard to say what either of these teams is right now in a lot of ways, given that they haven't really played anybody all that tough. So I'm very curious to see. I very want to think that NC State could make this a game, make it an entertaining one, and keep it down to about a touchdown as they've made it a tradition recently. So.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's definitely going to tell us a lot about both teams, and then somehow in a couple of weeks, none of it will have mattered anyway, and it'll be a completely different situation because that is the ACC.
Go ACC to that, I was about to say. All right, let's move on, Justin. 12:20 p.m. on the ACC Network Extra. The North Carolina Tar Heels on the road in the Carrier Dome against the Syracuse Orange. The Orange are a 10-point favorite, which is interesting for a team coming off a loss to Pittsburgh, who is one of the pretty objectively worst teams in the ACC right now, and yet they've come off a bye week. UNC coming off a pretty demoralizing, frustrating loss to Virginia Tech last week in a game that they had won, and then they found a way to lose. I'm going to be honest. I thought Syracuse might be maybe a little bit of fool's gold earlier in the year after, you know, they did pull a close loss to Clemson, but then they lose to Pitt, and it's like, oh, man, like, I don't know what they are. But honestly, I think this is a really bad spot for North Carolina. 10 points with Syracuse for a team that needs a little bit of good mojo moving forward, that has shown some good stuff. I think this is the game. Dino Babers breaks the 4-win glass ceiling that's been there so far, and Syracuse covers 10 and I think rolls in this game. I've got Syracuse winning this game like 45-28. And UNC's been better lately, but I don't think they're coming back from last week to now go into the Carrier Dome and make this a game.
Yeah, I mean, the Carrier Dome, it's kind of cliche at this point, but it's a really weird, difficult place to play. Nobody likes going there. It doesn't really matter even how good they are. It's just a strange environment that's so foreign to everybody because nobody has a dome in college football. Mm-hmm. And especially when Syracuse is somewhat competitive as they have been this season, they're going to have a pretty decent crowd on hand. It doesn't take much to make noise in there, and it's going to be a hostile environment. The only hope that I could see North Carolina having is if Cade Fortin is somehow healthy for this football game. I thought he really gave them a spark in the first half against Virginia Tech. I thought he gave them kind of a little bit of confidence. He was out there making plays, even for an inexperienced kid. And at this point, I haven't seen an update that said he was likely. It sounded like it was still very much up in the air, his status. And if he can't go, I just don't think this is going to go very well for Carolina. They've already had so many troubles. Carrying over from last year into this year has kind of just kept going in that same trajectory of, well, what else can happen to us at this point? And like you said, that loss last week, they had the game. They just did. They played much better than Virginia Tech almost up until the last 2 minutes. So 58 minutes of really, really good football blown away by a rough last drive. I'm with you. I think Syracuse will be able to cover. I think they'll be able to win comfortably. I'd say like 42-17.
Yeah, I don't really know what the North Carolina quarterback situation is right now. I mean, you've got Chat Surratt out for the year. You've got Cade Fortin coming in as a starter to replace Nathan Elliott, but then getting hurt, and so Nathan Elliott's back in there. Is Fortin healthy or not? Nobody's really sure, but I guess Fortin has been kind of the best thing about their quarterback situation yet this year. And even then he led UNC to 19 points last week, if that. I mean, if that's the best thing you got going, I
didn't say it was good. I just said it was an improvement. There's a difference.
Small but important difference there. Absolutely. I don't really have a lot of faith in this North Carolina team. And I know they have been playing better for sure. I mean, the last 2-3 games, they started to get guys back from suspension and all that. Like, they've You know, they beat Pittsburgh. They gave Virginia Tech a run for their money. I mean, they're not looking like the pushover team they were week 2, week 3, that kind of thing, you know, but this feels like a year where Larry Fedora is just losing control of this team and not able to really push them across the finish line. And it's crazy to me how quickly they've fallen off from 2-3 years ago when they were winning the Coastal. They had the number 1 overall pick in the draft with Mitchell Trubisky. Excuse me, number 2 overall. Sorry. But like, I mean, this whole thing, like, I don't believe in North Carolina. This seems like a bit of a mentally soft team. They're coming off a brutal loss. I'm not going to overthink this. Syracuse has multiple answers at quarterback. If Eric Dungey gets hurt or is not playing well, they've got Tommy DeVito. You know, Syracuse has one bad loss, one near miss over the defending ACC champion. I'm going to just stick with the orange. I'm going to lay the 10, feel good about it, and just call it what it is.
Yeah, that's fair. I think North Carolina is probably the kind of team that will like win a game down the stretch they shouldn't. Like they'll pull it all together 100%. Somehow. 100%. Like I could see them beating like Duke or something in a game that they shouldn't maybe win. But
Georgia Tech.
Yeah, well, you never know. So yeah, it could happen. Georgia Tech is inconsistent enough. I'm sorry to say that could totally happen. But yeah, someone like that is going to get bit. I mean, the Hokies almost got bit, so it definitely can happen to anybody. And but yeah, it does feel very much that Larry Fedora is just so thankful he has too much money on his contract to probably get fired this year, because it does not seem like a stable program right now.
Yeah. So I think we're in agreement here, Justin. Syracuse, lay the 10. Again, I'm going like 45-28. You don't have to necessarily provide a score prediction, but again, you think pretty big here for Syracuse.
Yeah, I said something like, I don't know, 42-17 or something like that. You're comparable to what you're saying.
42-17, you're correct. All right, last one, 3:30 p.m. on ESPN2 on the Deuce, if you're so inclined to switch over there from the NC State Clemson game. The Wake Forest Demon Deacons on the road in Tallahassee against the Florida State Seminoles. The Noles are a 10-point favorite in this game. Justin, I'm not going to lie. I'm really, really struggling to handicap like either of these teams right now. Like we've seen some really good stuff by Wake Forest against some lesser competition, and we've seen them get absolutely drubbed by Notre Dame and Clemson. But the thing is that Florida State started the season ranked and then immediately started looking like quote unquote lesser competition, struggling to beat Samford, getting lucky to beat Louisville, frankly, like. And at this point, I think I'm of the opinion that, like, I don't know that I can really feel good about laying 10 points with Florida State against a whole lot of anybody. And I recognize Wake Forest defense is not good. I mean, Florida State's offense has had their problems, but maybe they can get something going against the Deacs. Wake Forest has shown some flashes on offense in a lot of ways, but I don't know if they can necessarily do it against the Noles. But I think I'm just going to take the 10 points with Wake Forest, and I think Florida State still wins, but I don't know how close, how much distance they're going to be able to get on this Wake Forest team.
Yeah, I agree with you. This is just a weird game, and it's terribly unattractive. The fact that it's on national television is kind of hilarious to me, and definitely not a good thing for the conference as a whole. You're right. I think Wake Forest has some really nice pieces on offense. I think Sam Hartman's been a really, really pleasant surprise. Greg Dortch is always very dangerous, but they just kind of lack firepower overall. There's not enough depth there, I don't think. And their defense is just a dumpster fire right now. And I don't know that there's anything at this point in the season that they can do.
They have changed defensive coordinators.
They have, and I don't know if that helped at all.
Yeah.
It doesn't appear to have made much of a dent. It was very much stepping in front of a boulder going downhill. But you know what? They had to try something. I get it. It just hasn't seemed to have had a huge effect. Florida State is such a strange team. It seems like they should almost be better by default, and there's a ton of talent there, and they can't seem to be doing anything. They can't get out of their own way. They can't run the football, which is just baffling to me. I don't know if they're going to be able to figure that out this game, but I think they're 122nd in the country in rushing yardage, which is just dismal for anybody, let alone Florida State. So, I think you're right that that Wake Forest can keep this close just by default. That 59 over under number is interesting. Like, it seems dicey to really get near it, but at the same time, like, I could see this being like a gross 17-10 game. Like, it wouldn't shock me.
Well, let me put it this way, Justin. I've got 2 questions for you. They're very simple yes/no questions, and I want you to answer the first thing that comes to your mind. All right, you ready?
All right.
Number 1, is Florida State the more talented team?
Yes.
Number 2, does it matter?
No.
Not necessarily.
Not really, no.
It hasn't yet. They've been the more talented team in most of the games they've played.
That's true.
And it almost hasn't mattered in a lot of cases. Are they more talented than Samford? Yeah. Did they lead Samford after 55 minutes? Nope.
No, it's been just like I said, just a really weird season. And we talked in preseason a little bit about it. I wasn't sure what they were going to get with Willie Taggart overall, but certainly this season, everyone was talking about, oh, they're ranked, they're a good team, blah blah blah. And I was like, are they? Like, I mean, maybe, but it didn't seem readily apparent. And it seems like they've had a little bit more of a transitional problem than I think anybody expected, even kind of people who are lukewarm about them, like myself. So it's really strange. I don't know what to make of it, but they'll go out there and play.
Yeah, here's why I'm at. Wake Forest coming off a bye. I think the defense will have gotten something figured out, anything. I think Sam Hartman's going to be a little bit healthy. He had a long and painful afternoon against Clemson a couple weeks ago. I think he's going to be feeling a little bit better. Again, I think they'll have some mojo back. I think they're going to make this a closer game than 10 points. I think Florida State still wins. Give me the Noles 34-26. They win but do not cover.
Yeah, I actually, since I already said it out loud, I'll go with my 17-10 Florida State pick because
oh, hell yeah.
That seems hilarious to me and totally plausible.
We're going under on that one. All right. It's one of those things of like, I don't necessarily know or feel great about how Wake Forest is going to move the ball on Florida State. Their defense has admittedly been pretty dang good most of the year. But on the other hand, it's like Florida State should move the ball a lot better than they do. Wake Forest defense, as atrocious as they've been the last few weeks, like, again, a bye week, new coordinator. I think they took the time, probably figured something out. So yeah, I'm gonna have faith in Dave Clawson. I'm gonna have faith in the Deeks. Let's go 34-28 or 26 or whatever. Not quite 10 points. Florida State wins. Wake covers though. You good with that, Cates?
Yeah, that makes sense. I like it.
All right. We totally neglected to mention picks of the week as we went through, and breaks a pattern. I feel bad. I've messed this up, but we agreed picks of the week. And again, you're covering Mike's pick of the week, so he is beholden to whatever you've got here. Justin, I think my pick of the week, game I feel the best about, I'm going to lay the 10 points with Syracuse. And that feels like a dangerous exercise to lay 10 points with Syracuse in a pick of the week. But again, this feels like an awful spot for North Carolina. Syracuse should be pretty good in this game. I think they win this game pretty comfortably. So Syracuse -10, my ACC pick of the week. Lock it up.
That's an exciting pick because you're right. That could go south real fast.
Oh, totally could. If we were talking this time next week and I said North Carolina won that game outright, would you be shocked?
No, not even a little bit. This is the time of season where that stuff starts to happen every week. It's like we finally think we've got it figured out a little bit. It's like, okay, Syracuse they're fine. They'll be fine. Carolina's terrible. And then that's exactly the kind of stuff that starts to happen. But no, I like that. Yeah, I like that pick. My lock of the week is going to be something we touched on a little bit earlier, but I'm going to take NC State to cover against Clemson to get inside of that 17.5 points. Again, if it goes the other way, not a shocker at all. But I think NC State's defense is good enough that they can keep it at least close. And I think I have a lot of faith in Ryan Finley. He's been very good, and I think their whole offense has been surprisingly good, which has kind of been maybe the missing link over the last handful of seasons for that program. And now that they've got it kind of headed in the right direction, I think that makes sense. So that's my lock of the week. And Mike's, incidentally.
Yeah, that's right. It's ballsy, but I like it. That is a taking the points against Clemson could be an exercise in futility at this point in the year. But again, I'm with you. I agree. I think you just take 17.5 and trust NC State to keep this game close that they have for a couple of years now. So we'll have to see. Oh, Justin, this has been a lengthy, extensive, thorough preview of the nearly 5 ACC games we have this weekend. Anything else that you wanted to hit on, chat about, whatever, before we get off here?
Not really. This is like the calm before the storm as ACC football goes. We're settling in. People are already, a lot of these schools are already looking towards basketball season here in a couple of weeks, as the podcast namesake would have us think. But you know what? There's still plenty of really interesting football, and it's going to get real weird right in time for Halloween.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's already doing that for sure.
True.
You actually make a good point. It's kind of funny. Yeah, this is a quiet week. Last week we had 5 games. This week we've got 4. If you start looking at next week there are 7, but that's just straight up ACC play. Like that's kind of the thing I've been really waiting for, is this, rubber meets the road kind of situation where it's just conference games left and right, and you start really getting a good feel for who's good and who's not. So 7 straight up conference games next week, which should be fun to watch. But once again, don't forget, this is ACC Divisional Championship Saturday for both divisions. So
the conference semifinals or something like this is very intense, actually. And
absolutely,
you're absolutely right to point that out. It's a good point, and it should be fun to watch those.
Given that one of those games is Virginia at Duke, this is just the strangest timeline, Justin. 2018. I don't know what I expected from 2018, but it probably should have been something like this.
Yeah, this is in keeping with how things have been going in the world at large. So I think it only makes sense that Virginia and Duke have big aspirations at this point in the college football season.
Completely agreed. Totally appropriate. And I frankly, I just should have been expecting this all along. Justin, this has been awesome having you on. Thank you so much for joining and for stepping in for Mike. I hope he hasn't, gotten his food yet, or it's not getting cold or anything like that. But, we wouldn't wish that on anybody. But would you please tell the people where they can find you on the internet?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm glad that I was able to help out and fill in for Mike, who is being irresponsible in terms of dietary needs, but that's okay. Happens to the best of us. You can find me at InsideTheACC.com. You can find us on Twitter at InsideTheACC, and you can find me on Twitter at BestCates.
Yeah, recommended that you do. Justin's a really good follow. If you're Virginia Tech folk, as Mike is, you're in good hands with Justin. He is also Virginia Tech folk. But really good overview of the whole conference. So highly recommend going and checking him out on Twitter if either of those things is something you're looking for. Once again, he's at BestCates on Twitter, or you can just go find him on InsideTheACC.com, at InsideTheACC on Twitter. Justin, you're the man. Thank you for joining us. Really, really appreciate it.
For sure.
We're gonna get out of here. We're gonna come back and recap these games this weekend. Hopefully, Mike will have eaten, and I'm trusting. Yeah, I'm going, couple of maybe chicken wings with like a biscuit. I don't know, like half and half tea. Maybe, you can't go quite sweet tea at this age,
Yeah, I don't know. There are a lot of ways you can play it, and it's kind of later in the evening, so it'll be fascinating to see what he decided.
Oh, he's a John Daly kind of guy, isn't he?
I could see that.
He's getting a half a lemonade and throwing some Firefly in there. As one does.
Put it past him. Actually, as a side note, I'm going to be seeing Mike in person in a couple of weeks. I pulled the trigger and bought Boston College at Virginia Tech tickets, so I'll be believe that's a homecoming game, which is traditionally not a good thing in Blacksburg. It's we lose a lot then, but it'll be good. I'll see him in the flesh, and maybe we'll get chicken together.
Let's put it this way: they picked a really bad opponent for trying to change that trend.
I know.
That's a very losable
game. That game terrifies me.
Very losable game. Georgia Tech lost their homecoming game last week to Duke, so that's fine. Anyways, we're going to come back, recap these games when the weekend is over. But in the meantime, you can find us on Twitter. I am at FTRSJoey. Mike is at Mike McDaniel CFB. Together, we're at BC Podcast ACC. And once again, he is at Best Cates or at Inside the ACC on Twitter. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, the Overcast app, wherever fine podcasts are sold for free. They can send us an email with their questions, comments, concerns to the longest email address known to man, basketballconferencepodcast@gmail.com. This is where you say nailed it.
Got it. Yeah, you slammed that.
Yeah, thank you. There we go. You can find us on YouTube. You can go search for our channel. We don't have a fancy URL or anything, but you can come check out Justin's sweet, fancy beard. It looks good. It's all groomed. Looking, you ready for winter with that thing? Keeping you warm?
Yeah, this is actually slightly under control compared to a couple of weeks ago. It started to get too grizzly, so
had
to reel it in a little bit.
No such thing. And you can also find us on Facebook, facebook.com/basketball conference. You can rate, review, and find all of our podcasts there. You can make sure you rate and review us on iTunes, Google Play, wherever you find us as well. That is very much appreciated. Justin, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for joining us. You want to come back and join the program again soon?
We should do it. I like being with you guys, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for joining us. Come back sometime soon. We would love to have you. It's always a pleasure having you on. Well, until next time, when Mike and I come back and recap these games, or when Justin comes back and helps recap, if Mike's still in the drive-thru line, we'll have to see. For Mr. Justin Cates, I am Joey Weaver. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. And until next time, go ACC.
Go ACC.